Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. The 3-0 Lakers head out on a 5-game road trip. What's it going to look like, and what's the rotation going to look like? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everyone for making Locked On Lakers your very first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. This one about an undefeated team will never be behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube.
We didn't charge you during the bad times.
Right. Well, we have but now would be the time. It's like, you know what? They're undefeated.
No.
$10.
If you stuck with us for free during the bad times, we are not going to turn around.
All right, that's fair.
And provide a surcharge once things are going well.
It's only a paywall for new people.
Yeah. Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone sticking with us through the bad times. You get charged. Everyone else, it's free.
The new folks, Venmo it to KAMENETZKY.
Just again, don't CC David Locke.
No.
Between you and me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where over 25,000 excited subscribers are all hanging out and relishing in this nice early start for the Lakers as they head out onto their first road trip of the season, one that has some interesting games in it, to say the least. So we will get into that in a moment, which games look winnable, which games might be a little tougher, and why, of course, this 3-0 start is so important as the Lakers head out on the road. Of course, first game tonight in Phoenix. But we want to start a little bit, too, with some of the early season wrinkles in the rotation. There are two guys that stuck out to us, Andy, in particular, and D'Angelo Russell for some early season bumps. Again, we're in week, game 3, game 4 tonight, so it's obviously very early.
And his game 3 was very good. D'Lo played very well.
It's certainly better than the other ones.
Yeah, he played a good game.
Dalton Knecht coming off the bench, which is both a conversation about Knecht and also the other bench options for the Lakers. We'll talk about that. We'll get into the road trip. Do want to let everybody know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. So let's begin with D'Lo, because as people know, we are residents of D'Lo Island. You and I have been for a little while. I have D'Angelo Russell on my fantasy team this year. I drafted him in part because of belief and in part because it's good content. But it is an interesting process for him, even beyond the statistics, Andy, to see what these first 3 games have looked like under JJ Redick, a coach that Russell has praised up and down. In these, like, it's not like they've tilted the offense in his direction.
No, they've actually tilted it very much in the opposite direction of D'Angelo Russell. He is currently averaging, his numbers are down across the board, whether you're talking about the raw production or field goal attempts, 3-point attempts. Like, these are some of the lowest numbers of D'Lo's career. And in particular, his usage percentage is quite low. It's currently at 14.8. It is the lowest of his career by a pretty wide margin. He's currently 7th on the team in usage percentage. I don't suspect it's going to stay this low throughout the season, but it is something that he's going to have to get used to over this year, as it's very clear there is a directive to have the ball in Austin Reeves's hands more as a playmaker and a facilitator, and there is the overarching directive that Anthony Davis better damn well touch the ball on basically every single possession. And LeBron is LeBron. Rui has been very aggressive looking for his opportunities starting out. So D'Lo is the guy that I think is feeling this the most. For what it's worth, the next 2 lowest usage percentage seasons for him are actually his most recent 2 with the Lakers. So relatively speaking, this is something that D'Lo has needed to adjust to throughout his time since returning to this team, but he definitely is dealing with it on a very extreme level right now. And you can tell he is looking to feel out this situation without ruffling any feathers whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to watch. I think Saturday's game, the win over the Kings was his most productive from a statistical standpoint, certainly. And he good things were happening when he was on the floor. He a couple missed defensive assignments, but that is going to happen periodically where he just gets a little overwhelmed. And Sacramento's a very good offensive team.
It's a tough team for checking guards.
Right. And so, his engagement, I think, is pretty good.
Yes.
And, I think what's really interesting to me is watching him try to balance. I know I need to be aggressive. I can't just be that guy, the 1 of 6 on Friday, for example, is problematic in part because 1 of 6 isn't very good. It's also 6 is low. 6 is very low for a player like him. And so when he recesses too much and doesn't shoot the ball and whatever, it has a bad impact on the offense. Like, he needs to be a threat, not necessarily super high volume, but you got to believe that when the ball is in Russell's hands, he's either going to, press in advance, he's going to take the 3, he's going to get to the bucket, he's going to do something to make you come out and treat him with the respect that his offensive game frankly deserves. But picking and choosing those spots, it's like, when do I, there were a couple shots on Saturday where I could tell, like, he's like, I haven't touched the ball in a little while. He gets it, puts it up. There were a couple others where he's like, I haven't touched the ball in a little while. I get it and I'm going to, move the ball. I'm going to drive the lane. That balance for him, I think, is going to be really important, and finding comfort there, I think, because when he tends to try to sort of flow too much and not be in the way and be part of the system and be a good team player in that way, I think it also slows him down on defense. And so, he needs to keep aggressive on both ends of the floor. Ultimately, I agree with you. His usage is going to fall somewhere in between what it has been with the Lakers and what it is now. He's not going to be 14% all year. And if he can maintain a, 38, 39, 40% three-point range, get to the bucket, get to the line, he's going to be very good. And it will kind of rearrange the hierarchy for the Lakers in ways that work well for them, where maybe Reeves really does put himself a step above Russell in a way that he couldn't do last year.
Well, here's speaking of that, what I think is really interesting also in terms of things that D'Lo's navigating right now. Last season, once you got past the starting 5 and you started having substitutions coming in, the way Darvin typically grouped the top 4 guys was very often you would have AD and Russell playing together with reserves and LeBron and Reeves playing together with reserves. And I think those decisions by Darvin made a lot of sense. And in particular with D'Lo and AD, it made sense in the sense that D'Lo is the worst defender of those 4. So you would match him up with Anthony Davis, the best of them, and also the guy that can maybe provide the most, not even maybe, definitely provide the most backline playing with D'Lo. But also, D'Lo was by far the most conscious on this team of actually involving Anthony Davis and feeding him and making sure that he was set up, with this year's directive being there, like, again, no, seriously, give Anthony Davis the damn ball or there's going to be problems. It starts becoming less of a thing for D'Lo specifically to be doing that. There's less of an onus on him, more of a team-wide onus. So he's now actually been grouped more with LeBron among the subs.
Yeah.
And Reeves and AD have been together more. It's working well. And case in point, the 21-0 run that the Lakers opened the fourth quarter with against the Kings, that got them back into it. D'Lo was on the court for the entire time of it.
Sure was.
Like,
the game, the plus minuses, and we'll talk next about the Knecht and some of the bench, because Knecht's role in Saturday's game was interesting too. But the plus minuses in this game were all over the place. AD was dominant. He was minus 22 in the game. But, so just, not always the best.
No.
Thing. So let's talk about Knecht and let's talk about the bench.
I have one more thing I want to get into D'Lo before we get to Knecht, though.
Sure, but we'll do that. Let's do it after the break.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, you can enjoy the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So let's just say you're watching a game and it feels like you are anticipating everything before it happens. A big passing play, big busted run, a big timely turnover, even a field goal. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed whenever you place your first $5 bet. And NBA season underway. Friends at FanDuel have options for you when it comes to teams coming out of the West. Last I checked, and always make sure you are checking and looking into the stuff now, because with the Lakers at 3-0, things may change, but the Thunder were considered 3-1 favorites to win the West, according to our friends at FanDuel. The Lakers were only at 19-1. If this keeps up, people, that number is going to start
undefeated
lowering.
Los Angeles Lakers, Andy?
Well, I mean, look, our friends at FanDuel know what they're talking about, but even they did not anticipate a 3-0 start, clearly. So you want to get in on that number if you feel good about what you're seeing right now before the payout gets even lower. So check it out. Visit FanDuel.com.
All right, you had one more point you wanted to make about D'Lo before we turn to Knecht and the bench.
Yeah, that one of the things that I think is helping D'Lo through this period that, again, is clearly an adjustment for him. I mean, he's somebody that is a volume scorer and a volume shooter. Not, people sometimes say that like with guys who are inefficient and just get their buckets. I don't mean it like that for D'Lo. But just
he's an aggressive, he's an offensively oriented player.
Right. And he's somebody that is used to having the ball in his hands a lot. So he is not somebody that you can expect to make the most out of 10 field goal attempts or 8 field goal attempts. Like he's just never been that sort of player. One of the things, though, that I do think is helping him right now is that when he's on the court, he's really not making many mistakes. Like he doesn't turn the ball over. He has not been, I think, forcing the issue to compensate for a lack of touches. He leads the team right now in assist ratio, which is assists for a player team compared to the number of turnovers that they've committed. He leads that by a pretty wide margin. So, and like you mentioned earlier, Brian, his defensive engagement, I think, is very good right now. And Redick has been keeping him on the floor for the majority of crunch time minutes so far to open this season. Like maybe not every single one of them, but the majority of them. Were I to guess, that is in part to reward D'Lo for the sacrifices that he's making, keep him engaged, because this is something D'Lo talked about during media day that matters to him. He didn't want to be continually either offense, defense subbed out all the time or being left off the floor altogether in these important moments. He is still being occasionally subbed out for Gabe Vincent for defense, but he's playing the majority of those minutes. And I imagine it's a combination.
And that's on a single possession, individual thing. Some of that, though, and you mentioned Vincent, I think there's no talk anywhere that Russell's not going to start. Like, so there's no let's move D'Lo to the bench stuff. There's no, there is a, hey, can JJ Redick elevate Austin Reeves? And that's something I think is both a reflection of kind of the feeling of the long-term value in the franchise, but also a short-term, like Austin Reeves. We've said it that Austin Reeves needs to be better, not because he's bad, but because if the Lakers are going to treat him like the third best player on a team with championship aspirations, he's got to be a little bit better. He's been very good. This isn't but he needs to be a little bit better. Okay. And so to do that, you do need to sort of figure out how you can maximize them. And it is a finite amount of possessions in a game. Someone is going to get fewer, and it looks like that may be D'Lo to some degree. But there's no talk of like should we move into the bench? Should we do it? And some of that is related to the fact that the bench, the production from the bench, Max Christie, Gabe Vincent, nobody is putting pressure on those starters to do that in a way other than, I guess you could say, maybe somebody like Dalton Knecht. You could play with, Reeves as your point guard with LeBron of it. But short of that sort of major restructuring of what you're doing as a team, there is no pressure there from the bench. So I think D'Lo can feel comfortable knowing that I'm going to get 30 minutes a night on this team. It may look different. It may be 30, but I'm going to be involved in what we're doing. I'm going to be part of it. And over time, because I am a smart player working under a smart coach, we're going to find a way to do it. And if more of the lines look like what they did on Saturday with 4 or 5 rebounds, 5 or 6 assists. Maybe it's not 9 or 10 like he's had in other seasons or whatever, but 6 or 7 assists, 5 or 6 assists, low turnover numbers, hit 2 or 3 3-pointers, get to the line 5 or 6 times. Like that will make him an extraordinarily productive and valuable member of this team. So I think there's a path here that works for everyone.
I'm glad you mentioned too the idea that no talk so far of him moving to the bench. That matters, like not even specifically about moving him to the bench, but just D'Lo is somebody who is very aware of what gets said about him. Like he hears. Yeah. He hears everything. He will acknowledge, often through snarky comments. He knows what's being said. And if D'Lo is starting to hear, his numbers are down, they can do better than him. Like you can't win a championship with D'Lo producing at this level. The amount of faith that he can feel from JJ Redick and the staff that don't listen to that bleep. You're fine. Like we are not looking to change anything. You are doing the things that we are asking of you. That's going to help because remember, D'Lo's in a contract year. I know it feels like he's always in a contract year, but he actually is in a contract year right now. And he's got rabbit ears and he's smart enough to understand, hey, my market value wasn't what I wanted this offseason. And also, frankly, the market value for a lot of players at my stature, good but not great, has been difficult. It's very important that the team make sure that he feels like, hey, dude, you're doing what's being asked. Don't worry about that stuff.
You pointed out there were moments as in the fourth quarter, as JJ Redick was getting LeBron a little bit of rest, getting AD a little bit of rest, that the player that was in there was Dalton Knecht. And, his impact, he's not filling up the box score with assists and rebounds and all these things, but his impact offensively is pretty tangible. And it's been strong. And he's played with confidence. He is a player the other team needs to guard. He's all these other things. He's really the only player coming off the bench right now that I think you look at as and you're kind of excited to see him out on the floor. I mean, Christie has been okay. Vincent, I don't think has been particularly good. But Knecht, I think, has really distinguished himself, and it will be interesting to see, even over a first trip of the season, very early in the season, if he does start to eat into the minutes of other players on the team.
I think Jackson Hayes has been very good, but it's a very different type of role.
That's right, but I don't put it. And he's also in a different category of sure. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that he's getting the credit that he's
You're right.
Because he's playing very well. And it's important that he's playing well. He's the only other healthy 100%. Big that they have. With Knecht, though, he's so much more dynamic than any other scoring option they have off the bench. Like he moves extremely well with or without the ball. He anticipates the places that he needs to go. You can already see defenses are counting for him. And it's very clear, like he is, he's not at the top of the scouting report, but he's on it. And he's on it high enough at a place like pay attention to this rookie. Like they will give him opportunities. They will occasionally run plays for him. And, there's going to be rookie mistakes, but he does not play at all like a rookie that you have to be worried about on the floor. And, I tweeted this out during the Phoenix game on Friday at Cam Brothers. Once Christian Wood and Vando are eventually back, I don't know exactly what the rotation is going to look like, but if Dalton Knecht can maintain what he's doing right now, particularly defensively, where he's been fine. He's not been great, but he's not been bad either. I don't know how the rotation is going to look, but I would be stunned if he saw himself squeezed. I would be very surprised because there's nobody else who can do what he does other than maybe Wood. Other than maybe Wood when he's back. Nobody else can do it.
And correct.
Off
and
the
I think
bench.
there is a Vanderbilt-y quality to Dalton Knecht in that way. Obviously, very different skill set, but this is the person who does X, and there's nobody else who does X in the same way. We need X, and in this case, we need scoring, we need floor spacing, which is why, by the way, D'Angelo Russell is going to play late in games, and Gabe Vincent for now isn't, because the offense, the construction of the offense changes too much, and they become too easy to guard if you take away the threat of Russell and you add the threat of Vincent. It's just not the same thing. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm looking for that, particularly on this trip. Obviously Vanderbilt's not back yet, Wood's not back yet, but that they do reach a point soon where somebody's going to lose minutes, and hopefully you can take away a few minutes from LeBron, you can take some minutes away from AD and keep those guys fresh, and you keep Austin Reeves a little bit fresher and stuff like that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Max Christie is going to need to play a little bit better. Gabe Vincent's going to need to play a little bit better, and then we'll see how that goes, because the Lakers need some more strength coming off the bench. Let's look at the road trip. 5 games, some winnable ones and some challenging ones. We'll get to it next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Game Time, the best concert I've ever seen in my life. George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic, 1992, the Palladium in Hollywood. They played for 5 hours without a break, and I have ever since been chasing a concert that could top it. There's been a few that have come close. Prince at the Forum, Neil Young at the Greek, John Lee Hooker at the House of Blues. But as I keep searching, I will be using Game Time, because they make it easier to find tickets with new features like Game Time Picks that filters out all of the stuff that doesn't make any sense to you and just shows incredible deals on great seats, saves you time. They offer panoramic seat views before you buy, so you know exactly what the stage is going to be like and what the view, all of that stuff. Take the guess out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off.
Lakers open a 5-game road trip tonight in Phoenix. Of course, they beat the Suns on Friday night. That was at the Crypt, and the Suns, who did not look particularly great in their opener when they squeaked by the Clippers, did have a night, and obviously lost to the Lakers after blowing a pretty significant lead. They had a much better game, a victory against Dallas on Saturday. So they are looking a little bit, perhaps a little stronger going into their, I don't know if it's their home opener, but first Lakers road game anyway. So that game may look a little bit different than it did before, but it's it's another playoff team that they are playing against. Then they go to Cleveland for to play another high-end playoff caliber team in the Eastern Conference this time. So this will be 5 straight games, Andy, against high quality opponents for the Lakers, but now obviously the first 2 coming on the road, so that changes it up a little bit.
It also, too, right now, they head out on this road trip. That's going to be a test in and of itself, just because they have not done it yet with this group. It's going to be JJ Redick's first time coaching on a road trip, that sort of stuff. But they have alleviated, I think, a pretty big degree of pressure by entering this road trip 3-0. Like, It doesn't mean that they're going to take the foot off the gas or decrease any urgency. I think, if anything, that stuff is going to stay exactly the same, but not all urgency is created equally or comes out, like, manifests in the exact same way. And going into this road trip 3-0, you can maintain that urgency, but it can be fueled by pure confidence and excitement, as opposed to feeling like, okay, we need to get some of this back on this road trip. Like, all of a sudden, you're starting to try to leverage these games in different ways because you blew an opportunity against Sacramento, or you couldn't get back into it against Phoenix, whatever. the games are still incredibly important, but they can go about it, I think, feeling much differently in a positive way.
It's just the practical nature of it. It's like, let's look at the teams on this. So you go to Phoenix, you go to Cleveland. Those are two very difficult games where you can play well and lose both of them. Like, that's very possible with those games. You see Toronto and Detroit. Those are games that even on the road, I don't. These are not necessarily garbage squads, but the Raptors aren't trying. They're not in a position to try to go out and win titles right now. They've got some decent players, but they're not a great team. And Detroit is Detroit. They haven't won yet. So those are games that you think you ought to be able to go win, even on their floor. But then you finished it with Memphis. That's a tough game. I am a big believer in the Grizzlies this year, especially when Jaren Jackson comes back and they have a full squad. I think it's a very good team. That was a very good team a couple of years ago and will be again. 2-3 on that trip. Okay. That's very possible. Again, you can play some good basketball, finish that trip 2-3. If you are 1-2 right now and you go on that trip and you come back 2-3 and, then you see Philadelphia right away, you see Memphis, and then you got San Antonio, New Orleans. So, teams that are pretty good with, Toronto stuck in there. Philly by the early of November could have Paul George and Joel Embiid back. That game could look a lot different than it does for the Sixers right now. 2-3 when you're 1-2, all of a sudden, you're a couple games under 500. The other way around, 3-0, you're 5-3. You're feeling pretty good about yourself, and these games are hugely important for making it so after the All-Star break, when the schedule is really hard, also, you don't have to feel like you need to go and play 650 basketball just to maintain your position. Or move up from an 11 to a 9 or a 9 to a 7 or something like that. This stuff in these first 15 or 20 games while the Lakers are reasonably healthy is massively important. And that's part of the reason this 3-0 start is so big, even beyond the vibes. It's not too early for the math to start, to start working the math and thinking out what this stuff does for the rest of the season.
They are breaking the cycle, Brian. That's what they're doing right now in terms of trying to prevent the mad dash in the last 30 to 40 games of the season. Like, those games, don't get me wrong, are still going to have a lot of intensity to them. There's going to be a lot of importance on them regardless. Like, the in all likelihood, and I'm more than happy to be wrong about this, the Lakers are not going to boat race the entire West to the point where it does not matter what happens over the last 20 games. Again, if I'm wrong, don't bother adding me because I'm already going to be thrilled about it.
Right. I'm excited. I did not predict the Lakers would win 70 games. Okay.
Yes. I'm very excited to look at game 63 when the 62-0 Lakers take the court. Right.
But and when you do that, you can certainly be like in your face as if you had predicted you out there.
Whatever.
The Lakers would be in that position.
At that point, if you want to tell me that I don't know jack bleep and you don't know how I host this show, fine, whatever.
Right. Don't care.
I will handle those first world problems with a smile. But every single one of these games really, truly matters. And, that's something we've emphasized this point a lot. And it's something that I think the Lakers as an organization can often lose track of because they get caught up in their own mythology and ethos with the idea of we only play for championships and, we don't hang regular season banners. We don't hang Pacific Division banners or even Western Conference banners. It's about championships or nothing. Fine. I mean, if nothing else, that is a great galvanizing agent for your fans and sometimes maybe within your own building. But you cannot downplay the regular season to a point where you don't apply enough urgency, where you put yourself in the best position to actually win in the playoffs. I think the Lakers sometimes do fall into that trap. You can get away with it when you've got prime Kobe and prime Shaq working together. Yeah, blow off those regular season games.
Or like you're so good that even when you are kind of blowing off the game, you win anyway.
Right. I mean, I remember it was either 2001 or 2002. I mean, the Lakers were clearly sleepwalking through the regular season, and then they blew the doors off the playoff run. But again, prime Kobe, prime Shaq, much easier to do that than, with all sincere respect, LeBron at 40 and Anthony Davis back end of his prime. Like that group was just different with Kobe and Shaq.
Yeah. I also too, I know I mentioned like it's not just, I don't want to downplay though the value of vibes.
Yes.
It was it's really important for the Lakers. I mean, I think that you could see in training camp the level of confidence that they had in Redick. They're like, oh, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. I know he's not done this before, but he's clearly, very competent. He's got a good system. He's got a good, and he runs like an efficient, like, okay, like, but like that said, the world is paying really close attention. And, to kind of circle it back to D'Lo, who was it? It was Emmanuel Mudiay. When D'Lo, right, the first week or 2 weeks of D'Lo's, because there was a lot of people, should they take Mudiay? Should they take Russell? Rookie season. And Russell really struggled for the first couple of weeks of the season. And Mudiay had like 3 of the best games that he had. It turned out that he was going to have as a pro. And the narrative and like the storyline for the rest of the season was, or most of it was, Russell sucks. Mudiay is awesome. Even though you looked up and like 3 months later, Russell was vastly outplaying Mudiay. The Lakers can go a long way to just silencing some of the noise around Redick. Did they make the right decision? Whatever. If they win 7 out of their first 10 games, even if they go 500 for the next 20, the beginning parts where people are really paying a lot of attention and the focus is right there. And that matters because then guys can go do their work and guys can, build the way they want to build and do the stuff that they want to do, because there's not this, did they do this horrible thing storyline circulating around. I mean, nobody's being asked, but everybody thinks JJ Redick's great. We're done talking about it. We're moving on. And these guys need to feel good about what they're doing because it's internal improvement, it's coaching staff improvement, and all that stuff that's going to make them better than they were last year. Part of internal improvement is feeling really good and confident about what it is that you're doing on the floor.
With the noise factor, it's a different version of what we talked about with why it was important to get the LeBron Bronny moment out of the way.
Yes.
So nobody's talking about it anymore. It's a more important version of it, but it's the same concept.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so Lakers versus Suns tonight. We'll obviously bring you everything that happens after for Tuesday's show. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where we're going to hang out with 25,000 subscribers. Let's see if we can go to 4-0, Andy. Can't go 82-0 without 4-0. Let's give it a shot. See you everyone tomorrow.